All right, we are live. Thank you to those who are already tuned in, and for those who are tuning in later. This is Isaac Popper at iPopStats on Twitter. Fear the Waves, Green Wave Insider, here to preview Tulane versus University of Alabama Birmingham. The 3-2 Green Wave won their conference opener. In case you missed it, I think you'd have to be living under a rock. 45-10 last week over South Florida. It was widely expected to be a close game. The spread was less than a touchdown. Some Tulane fans told me that they thought USF was going to be favored in this game. And Tulane ran away with it, so much so that they beat South Florida and had more yards than South Florida and let up a lot less rushing yards against South Florida than number one Alabama did earlier this season, and had the same margin of victory over South Florida as top 10 Miami. So Alabama Birmingham, on the other hand, is struggling. They're just 1-3 so far this season. They've had a little bit of a tougher schedule. They played Alcorn State, which is their only win in FCS school, a school that Tulane dominated just 2 years ago in the Cotton Bowl season. They lost to University of Louisiana Monroe 32-6, which was not good. Then they played an SEC school in Arkansas, pretty tight, 27-37. They went to Navy last week and lost 18-41. They also had an early bye week in September before the Navy game, so 2 weeks ago. So that's why they've only played 3 games against an FBS school. If you're listening, please drop some questions in the comments. I will see them on the StreamYard and answer them to the best of my ability. The series history is tied at 6-6, so we'll see who can come out and take the lead in the series. On play-by-play, we have Lowell Galindo, color analyst Fozzie Whitaker, sideline Smacker Miles. This is the first time that Tulane will have a sideline reporter at their game since Oklahoma. We didn't have one versus Southeastern in the opener, as well as the last 2 weeks against at Louisiana Lafayette and home versus South Florida. I cannot confirm whether there was a sideline reporter against Kansas State or not. So potentially the second, maybe the third game this season with a sideline reporter at the game. On Monday, I went to practice, and I really honestly could not tell that Tulane had even won on Saturday. The vibes were on to UAB. That was the whole entire focus. It truly was back to work. Coach Gasparato's defense looked sharp all week, so I think that we'll see a strong performance from the defense. And I'm also really excited to see what Tulane rolls out with 2 quarterbacks. They've been using 2 quarterbacks a little bit more in games, a little bit more in practices. I think we'll see some more of that this week, and maybe a Keith Brown jet sweep after we didn't see one last week. There's your Inside the Wave scoop from practice for this week. In terms of injuries, some guys rehabbing. Shaz Preston, Tate Jernigan, the running back on scout team. Shaz Preston, obviously the wide receiver, coming over from Alabama. Gabe Fortson, the third-string center, transferred from Georgia Tech. And George Arata is also sidelined with an injury as well. On Tuesday, we had the press conference, Tulane Tuesday, where all the television stations come in, ask a lot of questions. And John Summerall started off by talking about how he is adamant that Tulane needed to prepare a lot for UAB. It didn't matter that UAB is struggling right now, lost 41-18 in the conference opener, 32-6 to University of Louisiana Monroe earlier. They played tight with Arkansas. Navy's a good team, and he says that Tulane has a lot of work to do. So, indeed, that's what they did. They prepared hard. Darian Mensah was in the film room, extra hours, taking advantage of being on fall break, as he's pretty studious, so doesn't always have a lot of time in midterms and everything to go into the film room. And that not only were they watching film on Jacob Zeno, but they were also watching film on Jalen Kitna, who is almost definitely going to be starting at quarterback today. I could tell you with 100% certainty that's the case. He is the son of none other than NFL quarterback John Kitna. Number 17, he's 6'5", 220, redshirt junior from Tacoma, Washington, and Burleson, Florida. He has never started a game in NCAA. However, he is ready, and Tulane has been watching as much film as they can on him, even though there's not too much that does exist. He's a transfer from Baylor, where he backed up Anthony Richardson. He is also known for a child pornography lawsuit as well, if you recognize that name. Summerall said if we're not ready to play, we'll get exposed. We got to be ready to go. And indeed, this Tulane team is ready to go. Tyler Grubbs was the next one to be interviewed and said when he was awaiting the MRI on his knee, that was about as scared as he's ever been. Once he found out nothing was torn, he knew he'd play the conference opener versus USF. And he'll be ready to go again today. Mekhi Hughes went, raved about Darian Mensah, his O-line as usual. If you haven't already, make sure you check out our extensive interview with Mekhi Hughes from last week. Then after practice on Tuesday, we went to Fear the Wave, went to the Allie Andrews For the Wave Classic, where Coach Ron Hunter kicked us off with a quick story and then introduced the entire Tulane men's basketball team. I'll be heading out as soon as we finish this live stream to go and check out Tulane men's basketball scrimmage. Ron Hunter is also doing some media availability. So looking forward to that today as we get closer to the men's basketball season. I think there's a palpable buzz regarding Rowan Brumbaugh on campus right now. And Tulane has many guys that could be in the starting rotation this year. It could change throughout the season, and we really don't know who's going to start. I would say for sure that Rowan Brumbaugh is going to start, and then beyond that, I think it's question mark, with about 9 guys that could fill those other 4 spots. Maybe 2 or 3 starting spots are kind of locked in at this point. From around the campus, Green Wave bowling team is ranked in the top 15 in the entire country. Need to give a quick shout out where that is due. Some more Fear the Wave news. We had some pizza night thanks to Reggie Reginelli at Reginelli's for hooking up some of the men's basketball players and football players with some food. Again, it's successful Al Andrews For the Wave Classic, 18 holes for about 12 different groups playing out on the course, and the men's basketball players came around and joined the groups for a little bit at times. A lot of the coaches played as well. Mekhi Hughes and Sam Howard are both from Birmingham, so this is a homecoming for them. We actually sold out the Tulane allotment in Birmingham. Mekhi Hughes and Sam Howard said they were giving tons of tickets to friends and family. People were hitting them up where they hadn't heard from in years. Always good to see Tulane have interest on the road. I know Uptown Update is there in person, Mr. Katzpatrick as well, so follow along with the Uptown Update throughout the game today. A couple other guys are from Alabama. Shaquem Laister, Bobby Noel is from Gulf Shores, Alabama. Who else? We've got Shaquem Laister, Bobby, Sam Howard, Mekhi, Jaden Lewis as well, the true freshman, one of the highest rated recruits in Tulane history. I believe that Jacob Barnes will actually be starting today as the kicker, keeping Ethan Head on kickoffs, as Ethan Head has a lot bigger leg than Barnes, but I do believe Barnes to be back on extra points and short-range field goals. Ethan Head says he's comfortable kicking within 55 yards and in, as long as there's no wind or adjusting that with the wind. But Barnes practiced all week, so I expect him to be back. Patrick Durkin, the backup kicker, did not practice this week, or at least not until it was Rosh Hashanah when I couldn't make it to practice. Victory snowballs on Wednesday, which is when I interviewed Gerard Henderson. Please check out this podcast. An anonymous staff member called him the nicest member of the football team, and I would have to agree after chatting with him and having to hold my interview because he needed to go deliver a snowball to some of the staff members at the Green Wave Grill, which is the athlete dining hall on campus. With Jacob Barnes, he had, I believe, strained his groin a little bit, so that was the issue with him. And Durkin has some sort of a hip injury that has been holding him out for a while. Tulane will be wearing white jerseys, green pants, and a white Angry Wave helmet for just the third time in 6 years. They also wore these at ECU last season and in the 2020 Idaho Potato Bowl. ECU last season didn't go as well as Tulane fans would have liked. However, neither did the Idaho Potato Bowl. Idaho Potato Bowl a loss. Granted, we didn't really have much of an offensive line, and it was freezing. But ECU was a win, although closer than it should have been last year under Coach Willie Fritz. And it'll be 3 straight road games with Tulane wearing white, all with different colored pants. Quick note between Troy and Tulane, John Summerall has never given up 35 points in a game before. And then on Thursday night, without him, Troy gave up 38 points for the third time this season, exactly 38 points, and are now 0-5 against FBS teams. I think that just shows how impactful John Summerall was, as well as his coordinators in Joe Craddock, Greg Gasparotto, and some of the other positional coaches that he brought along as well. Tyler Grubbs, who we mentioned earlier, had that MCL MRI, had that MRI on his knee, was very scared after a little tweak in practice, played with an ACL brace on Saturday, practiced with that ACL brace all week. He had his PFF grade for defense rise from 85 to 92, which was actually one of the best 10 in the entire nation and the best among G5 linebackers after the regrade. We saw Gerard Henderson fall out of the top 10 in defense, tie with Navy safety before the regrade for the best in the conference. He also had the second best run defense grade in the entire FBS, not just G5, only behind a Louisville linebacker. So congrats, Tyler. And Tyler was my top defensive IPOP top players of the week. Later this week, Tulane landed a second recruit in Gabe Lavorne, who the staff have made some jokes about being similar to Taysom Hill. Gabe Lavorne is going to play tight end, most likely. He also played linebacker in high school. He could be used in the run game and was considered an even better linebacker recruit than tight end, according to the industry experts. Tennessee native chose the Wave over Ole Miss, Memphis, Troy, and many others. Just a quick recap of my IPOP top players in case you missed my game recap. We had Darian Mensah, Dante Fleming, Mario Williams, Tyler Grubbs, Gerard Henderson, and Matthew Fobbs-White honored for their performances last week. And then for honorable mentions, let's give some credit to some more people. On the defensive end, we had Parker Peterson, Micah Robinson, Pat Jenkins, Dixon Agu, Adonis Freelou, Ray Pleasant, Cam Hamilton, Jonathan Edwards. And on special teams, we had Ethan Head for over 500 kickoff yards, Joshua Moore, and Mike Luntz. And then on offense, we had Keith Brown, Josh Remetich, Caleb Thomas, Ty Thompson, Ra Green, Duda Barnes, Derek Graham, and Alex Bauman. The men's and women's basketball schedules also came out this week, so check out that. We got a comment from Charlie. Let's put it on. Good morning, Isaac. How are we feeling about the whole defensive side today? Do you think they can play just as well as the USF game? Um, I do. I don't know about that good just because in the USF game they gave up 25 26 rushing yards on 25 attempts. That is pretty unheard of. 1.0 yards per rush. They gave up 201 yards of total offense compared to Tulane's 528. They only gave up 12 first downs, 10 that weren't penalties, 2 rushing first downs. It's hard to play that good. Birmingham is starting a quarterback that we've never seen before, which makes it even more difficult than it would be if Kitna had probably played a few games, I think. Obviously, he doesn't have experience. It's his first game, but we saw Darian Mensah light it up, have one of the best performances in Tulane history, efficiency-wise, in the opener against Southeastern. It was an FCS school, of course, and played great against Kansas State at home with a career high to this day in passing yards, a number that, Michael Pratt had only done twice and hadn't done his first 2 years on Tulane's campus. And then it started to slow down and really hit him when he went to Oklahoma and, again, didn't have as good of a game at Lafayette. So I think that Kitna will probably do a little bit of damage in the passing game. I think Tulane's defense will certainly have a great game. It's just hard to – they played so well, 97th, 8th percentile good before you even consider the strength of opponent that I have a hard time – not a hard time. If I had to make a bet, I would bet that they don't do that again, but I would not be surprised at all because I do think this defense had a good week of practice and is improving a lot. I thought that the offense was better than the defense after the first 4 weeks, although I'm starting to reconsider that again after last week. I do think if Kitna can throw, he's 6'5", 220, son of an NFL quarterback. If he can throw, I think that the Wave could give up a little bit more than 201 total yards this week. Good question from Charlie. Keep them coming in the chat, please. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Before we hop off. Last year, Tulane played UAB actually and won 35-23. They played about the same time this year at home on September 30th, 2023. Tulane was 4-1 at the time. UAB was 1-4. So similar records. Tulane being above 500. UAB having only 1 win coming in. And Tulane was able to win against Trent Dilfer's I believe that was Trent Dilfer's first conference game. UAB's coach, another former NFL player. And the Wave actually trailed 20-14 at halftime, but then they outscored them 21-3 in the second half. It was a huge day for Mekhi Hughes, 22 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Michael Pratt struggled a little bit more, 14 of 23, 184 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he did run 6 times for 40 yards. Decent day for Jaquan Jackson as he ran for more yards than he actually had receiving. And it was a bit of a breakout game for Chris Brazel, who had a 39-yard catch. Maybe not a breakout game, but something that trended in the right direction for him for conference play. Brazel was huge last year for the Wave. Zeno is actually 334 yards short of 5,000 for his career, but as I said earlier, I don't think we'll see him. It should be John Kitna's son, Jalen Kitna, the transfer from Florida. I misspoke earlier and said Baylor, but he backed up Anthony Richardson at Florida. And this is the 13th matchup in the series, which began in 1999 on November 20th. UAB has the lead at UAB 3-2. Tulane's looking to even that up there. UAB's pass defense ranks 7th in the entire nation, so this will be a great road test for Darian Menta, who's been a lot better at home than on the road. Make sure you check out our Zoom interview with Darian Menta if you haven't already. And unlike Tulane, has had a lot of kicker issues with Ethan Head missing an extra point as well as a field goal. Jacob Barnes hurt, practiced all week this week. Patrick Durkin, the backup, hurt, missed practice and rehab this week. Their kicker, Jonah Delange, is a perfect 7 of 7 on field goals this season. Before we wrap up, let's go through the analytics this week and check out the game on paper for Tulane versus UAB. Noon kickoff. We're just 2 hours out. Tulane is 13th in the entire nation in EPA per play, and that doesn't even consider strength of schedule. When I tweeted "rank Tulane, you coward," I did not mean that I think Tulane should be ranked in the current system. However, I am very confident that Tulane is a top 25 team in the nation. They're 13th in EPA per play. They've played 2 ranked Power 5 teams and lost close in both of them, had chances in the fourth quarter in both of them. Many think that Tulane got robbed versus Kansas State. Indeed, they did have a touchdown, a game-tying touchdown called back with not much time left. They're in the top 20 in available yards percentage, 51st in success percentage, top 50 in yards per play, 10th in the country in offensive EPA per play, 24th in defensive EPA per play, 45th in offensive success, 28th in passing success, 15th in available yards percentage, 5th in the country in starting field position, top 10 in the country in third and fourth down success at 57.4%, 11th in net EPA per drive, 7th in net field position. This Tulane team is legit. They are in the top half of the country in every single game on paper metric. You heard me right. Top half of every single metric. Meanwhile, UAB is 95th in EPA per play. They have a negative expected points added per play, meaning they're below average. 89th in yards per play. 94th in available yards percentage. 95th in net EPA per play, although 40th in defense, 63rd in offensive EPA per play. Part of the problem is they're 101st in defensive success, 123rd in rushing success, but 12th in pass. But without Jacob Zeno, this game should not be close. The Wave should take care of business and roll. So I think with that, we've been on here long enough. Thank you for joining into our live UAB game preview. Hope you enjoyed. Time to go watch the men's basketball scrimmage and then Tulane destroy UAB. This is Fear the Waves, Isaac Popper. Thanks for tuning in. And catch my live tweets throughout the game. I will be live tweeting today. Roll Wave.